Hello everyone and welcome to Sunburned Albino's Top 20 Games of 2022. Last year wished for this year to be a hopeful oasis in an otherwise arid desert, and I would say 2022 delivered on game quality and quantity for the most part, though not quite as much as I expected with some of the delays like Starfield and Hogwarts Legacy, but it wasn't near as bad as the 2021 exodus when half the good games got knocked off the track before they could reach the station. Regardless, I'm happy with how this year turned out, and we're gonna celebrate some good games out here, alongside the notable exception category, which makes a brazen return to help keep things needlessly controversial by spurning some games I didn't like that other people did. We're starting with the good news first, though, so here come the honorable mentions before we launch into the official top 20. Also worth mentioning, I don't count early access games until the year they fully launch, so they can be judged as finished products. Number 24, Temtem. This game was in early access forever, but finally went 1.0 this year. While Pokemon was pioneering and monopolizing the creature capture genre, some studios eventually took it upon themselves to ask, what kind of contributions could we make to this genre? Are there ways the Pokemon formula could be improved, and can we make such improvements without causing unforeseen problems in other areas? With Temtem, the answer to the second question is yes, and the answer to the third question is no. Turns out it's hard to balance difficulty, economy, variety, and convenience into acceptable levels all around. Put a buttload of creature spawns in one place, you'll have tons of variety, but you'll never find the specific thing you're looking for. Make battles more difficult and taxing, and you strain the economy as buying healing items becomes more necessary. It's a thin line to toe in several directions, so the fact that Temtem does even a halfway decent job is admirable. The designs are the highlight. The majority of creatures are either cute or cool, very few duds. Whenever something appears, you're like, ooh, and that's a pivotal feeling to the experience. Battles are almost exclusively in a double battle format, but the XP is split, not shared, so grinding becomes an issue, but it's not near as bad as it was in early access. The battles themselves are much more fraught than in Pokemon. In Pokemon, you mostly send out whoever's gonna one-shot your opponent so you can win without taking a scratch, but in Temtem, everybody is getting injured all the time because moves do less damage and the powerful ones cost major stamina that can leave your Temtem unable to act on the next turn. This means you need heals constantly, and those items are expensive, which means you're gonna be dirt poor for a lot of the game. A nice mitigation to that, though, is the addition of a single-use portable full-party heal that can be recharged at any healing station. It doesn't feel like enough most of the time when you're doing long stretches of battling a dozen trainers along a route, but it's something. I've already spent way too long talking about this game, though, so the bottom line is it's decent, and it has the full in-world co-op you expected Scarlet and Violet to have until you were massively let down by their half-baked fake multiplayer bullshit. Number 23, The Mortuary Assistant. Horror games don't often get the honor of being regarded as actually worth a damn, other than streamer bait for lukewarm jump scares and cheap manufactured clip farming. But in the case of The Mortuary Assistant, I think this game does enough to stand out in a unique and replayable fashion. In this game, you must prepare bodies for embalming and storage through a laundry list of steps, all while slowly coming to terms with the fact that a demon is possessing one of them and needs to be identified and burned. It's a story that takes place over a series of nights and bodies with random elements, so you can't just brute force it with a guide. Your playthroughs might be different than someone else's, and scares can happen or not happen at random times, even while accomplishing some of the same tasks as the night before, which makes them more unpredictable and foreboding. The story is pretty interesting, with multiple endings that are worth going for, so I'm going to give The Mortuary Assistant my number 2 horror game of the year. Number 22, Such Art. Hitting 1.0 this year, Such Art is just a nice, relaxing game for anyone who enjoys dabbling in the art of digital painting. You can customize your own studio and take on commissions while adhering to their specifications as closely or loosely as you like. If someone says, hey, can you paint me a unicorn for my daughter? You will still get full price if you draw her a big fat. The controls are pretty responsive, and as someone who likes to draw in theory but never does it and isn't good at it, I've been able to make some creations I was happy with. Whether it's an original design or me just trying to draw Pokemon while looking at an example, they all end up looking like wiener dogs for some reason, but at least the juices are flowing. If you don't have paint supplies or you want to improve your Gartic phone skills, Such Art is a nice place to kick back and throw canvases in the trash. Number 21, Dome Keeper. Dome Keeper is an indie roguelike about time and resource management and base defense as you spend precious seconds between waves of enemies mining out the caverns underneath your dome to bring back valuable loot used for defense. gadget and player upgrades, like bigger lasers, better sonar, and increased carrying capacity. When the wave timer ticks down, you must return to your controls and use your weapons to stave off hordes of enemies who want nothing more than to shatter your shield and you along with it. Rinse and repeat with the ultimate goal of finding a giant relic somewhere deep underground and bringing it back to win the run. There's also other modes, like a score attack, and every run unlocks other gadgets, difficulties, and map sizes for future endeavors. I think this is one of those games that's more enjoyable to watch than to play, but it's still fun to play. Now it's time for one of our first notable exceptions, which I'm going to intersperse throughout the rest of the video so there isn't so much negative shit all in a row, and so people who aren't really paying attention get confused for fun. These aren't in any order of quality. Notable exception 1, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Figured I'd touch on this one first since I've already mentioned it. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are, at their core, some of the best ideas to come from Pokemon in a while, and deliver good stuff on certain aspects like narrative and overall creature design, but they are wrapped in the most god-awful technical presentation I've ever seen in a Switch game, let alone a Pokemon game, and accentuated by the most anticlimactic implementation of co-op I could possibly imagine. Scarlet and Violet co-op is a lie. Straight up. It's a fabrication. They had trailers where they were like, introducing 4-player co-op, travel the Paldea region with your friends. But little did we know, travel is all you can fucking do. You can't battle NPC trainers together, do the Team Star base raids together, battle the Titans together. Every single activity is single player only, except the Terra raids, and you don't need to be in the same world for that, so the existence of in-world co-op is actually just meaningless. You can't even watch your friend do a gym battle. They teleport to another dimension, and the battlefield is empty on your screen. It's so stupid. This game is a 3-day-old muffin at a cafe they didn't even bother nuking before selling it to you, and it exhibits a profound misunderstanding of what people actually want out of a co-op Pokemon game. I still have almost 100 hours in it, and I completed the Pokedex for the first time in my 20-some years of franchise loyalty, but man, even as it innovates, this series is on a steep decline, and it's really disappointing and sad for a billion-dollar IP that should be blowing us away at every turn. Nobody should be excusing this or downplaying the issues. You're only doing a disservice to your own future as a Pokemon fan whose attitude will help ensure more shittily made games to come. Okay, back to the top 20. Number 20, Ghostwire Tokyo. This game could have been a horror masterpiece, but they decided they didn't want to do that and wanted to keep things lighter while focusing on combat and exploration, which is a shame because the setting and lore is so good, but it never leans into the horror aspect at all. All these creepy and cool monsters and demons from Japanese mythology, and somehow there's no sense of tension and barely any atmosphere. It's still pretty fun and interesting, but there are moments where I see what they could have done and just feels like a waste. Like some of the indoor locations at derelict buildings and such are really well designed for horror, but then they just don't capitalize by putting nothing scary in it, and you have a general understanding that this game isn't actually scary at all. It's just an action game that draws from some creepy lore. The combat is fun and the spells are cool, but it could have been more. Number 19, a Supraland 6 inches under. Wasn't sure whether this qualified as DLC or an expansion or a new game, but it's a different icon on Steam than Supraland, so I say what the hell. If you ever played Supraland, this is more of that, and it's bulky enough to be its own game if it wasn't already designated that way. A first-person sandbox puzzle-solving Metroidvania with upgrades is how I'd describe it, and it's quite good at being that. Everything about it works and is satisfying, and it's just a good time if you're somebody who gets their itches scratched by games like Portal and the Talos Principle. Number 18, High on Life. The last notable new game I played this year, High on Life released December 12th, free on Game Pass, so even though I was worried about whether the absolutely horrendously gratuitous cringe dialogue that was on bold display in the gameplay trailers would be a deal breaker for what otherwise seemed like a decent, fun FPS, I paid nothing to play it, so I had no excuse not to try it. And this type of game is exactly what Game Pass is for, because otherwise they want you to spend $60 on something that'll run you about 7 hours with no replayability. Like, no. Just get Game Pass for a month for $10 and then cancel it if you don't care about anything else. The story and writing are from the guy who made Rick and Morty, and in this case that means 80% of the hundreds of jokes are just, fuck you, something something piece of shit, would you like to buy some cum? You can tell they're awfully pleased with themselves because there were at least 4 times I heard where the voice actor broke character in the middle of the line to laugh at what they were saying, and I can't tell if them keeping that in the game was on purpose or not. But even the vast minority of jokes that were kind of funny would just get beaten to death over the course of minutes of rambling and just get turned into incoherent, repetitive nonsense. If you watched the trailers and wondered if the dialogue was really that bad throughout, worry no longer. I'm here to tell you it's worse and it doesn't stop. However, the actual gameplay is fun, like I thought, and it was enough to keep me playing all the way through to the end in pretty much one sitting. Completionists will have more to go for, though. There's lots of chests to find, and some of them have important stuff like gun mods and ammo upgrades. But yeah, it's all wrapped up in the type of comedy that sounds like it was invented by a toddler going through puberty. It makes Borderlands sound positively Shakespearean. Number 17, Power Wash Simulator. I know, right? This game launched out of early access this year, and despite being the number one game friends will make fun of you for liking, there's just no denying the peaceful serenity of taking impossibly dirty objects and spraying them with liquid justice. So what if I put 40 hours in it? What are you gonna do about it? Pretend there's no satisfaction to be had in eliminating tenacious rust from the wheel spoke of a fire truck? Pretend spending almost 2 hours cleaning an entire kid's playground in a video game is a waste of time? Please. You won't know the true power you're playing with until you put on the protective suit and step behind the nozzle. Make dirt, yo bitch. Notable exception 2, Gotham Knights. I'm still confused as to how there's a contingent of people who weren't disappointed by this game, but they exist. I had to stop after 2 hours and I wish I could refund it, but Sony isn't as forgiving as Steam, even when a PS5 game can't run at 60 FPS. This game just bastardizes classic Arkham series combat, like painting over a Picasso with a toothbrush. It gets way too deep into the RPG weeds, adding an Avenger-style loot system that doesn't belong, like, oh, my weapons do 4 damage, but this new gear version I picked up does 6, wow. It all just feels like shit, in a similar way that the new Saints Row did, which sucks because the story seemed good and I'm a huge fan of Batman lore, but that game costing $70 on PS5 when it caps at 30 FPS and they weren't even making a PS4 version to hold them back is just indefensible. You're a AAA game, allegedly, and you want to price yourself like one? Use the damn technology. It looks worse than Arkham Knight, and that game came out 7 years ago on inferior hardware. What's your excuse? Suicide Squad comes out next year. You can watch trailers on that game and compare them to footage of Gotham Knights. The difference is literally night and day in the visuals and performance department. It makes Gotham Knights look pathetic. Top 20 Game of the Year, number 16, Cult of the Lamb. Ever wanted to be a cult leader, but without all the bad press and suicide packs? Cult of the Lamb might not let you have intercourse with all your members, but it sure gets some other aspects right, and delivers a fun Animal Crossing-like group sim attached to a Binding of Isaac-style roguelike. I don't think I'd have nominated it for Best Indie like the Game Awards did, but it's still very serviceable and has this evil cute factor that I wish more games incorporated. Number 15, The Quarry. I've been waiting for Supermassive or somebody to make a narrative choice-driven horror game that rivals Until Dawn ever since Until Dawn came out, and after all their bite-sized Dark Pictures anthology offerings, getting a full game in the form of The Quarry looked to finally be an answer to my wishes, and it mostly is. The visuals look stunning for a campy horror title, the cast stands out more than Until Dawn's, and it's got some hilarious moments, both intentional and otherwise, but werewolves aren't as interesting as Wendigos, and the story isn't as intriguing overall. I also got screwed into the bad ending because the game does a whole tutorial of telling you that shotgun blasts do more damage the closer your target is, and then it punished me for waiting until a werewolf got closer to me before firing by cutting off the QuickTime window like half a second early as it was running at me, when apparently I could have just shot it immediately where it was originally standing. So that sucks, and it got my character killed and literally ended the game right then and there. The game just fucked me and then rolled the credits like a dude who immediately gets up and leaves after a one-night stand that I'm laying there unsatisfied like, hello, that's all I'm getting tonight? But the game is still fun. I really liked the humor and general attitude of the dialogue. It felt like there were a couple sunburned albinos on the writing staff. I'd hear a character say something and I'd be like, damn, that's literally what I would have said. This feels authentic. So I do recommend it even though my playthrough fell apart at the end. Number 14, Shadows of Loathing. I lied, this is the last notable new game I played this year, and by the time this video goes up, I'm probably still doing a series on it. I had no idea this was a thing despite being a big West of Loathing fan. Someone had to tell me it had already come out back in November, and when I heard that I got so excited I immediately had to poop, so you know it's real. If you're looking for games that are actually funny, these ones are it. Not everything is a banger, but it's all text dialogue, so the cringe is less cringe when there's nobody there to deliver it. Aside from that, it's just a very minimalist-style turn-based RPG with different builds, and half the experience is just going to different places and using your inherent stats to figure things out, whether it's stat checks and conversation, or interacting with the environment to make things happen. With Muscle, you might be able to open a heavy door, or with Moxie, you can remove a sharp leaf from a plant and use it as a sword, or with Mysticality, you might bewitch someone into letting you by without a fight. It's really just a different experience. You'll understand better if you play it. Number 13, Metal Hellsinger. What a whole-ass vibe. Boot up Metal Hellsinger and let that main menu music send you straight to the stratosphere. This rhythm shooter plays like if Doom Guy had a metronome stuck up his ass, where you are heavily rewarded for firing shots and reloading on beat, laying waste to demonic hordes across a bevy of levels. This game takes a certain amount of energy. After I played a couple levels, I'd feel drained, like hell itself was sucking away my life force, because while you can kick back during other shooters, you've always got to pay at least some attention to staying on beat with everything you do, so after a while it's low-key exhausting. But when you're in there doing all these maneuvers and racking up score multipliers, it's triumphant. Number 12, Teardown. Teardown creates a unique world where everything in it is made of individual voxels and is fully destructible, and tasks you with setting up heist routes from objective to objective so you can make off with all the things you're trying to steal in one fell swoop. You might blow a hole in a second-story wall and then set up a ramp up there from the ground for easy access, while leaving a drivable car on the other side of the building through another hole in the wall to get you to your next destination quicker. Hell, you can level an entire building if it's in your way and you've got the explosive resources. If you take more pleasure in the planning of a heist than the execution, this is the game for you. You might spend 2 hours creating the perfect conditions for your speedrun just to perform the actual act in less than a minute, but it feels real good to see a plan come together, so it's definitely worth your time. Number 11, Dying Light 2. I think everyone forgot about this game. The PC version was apparently riddled with bugs, but I played it on PS5 and only encountered a couple fun ones, like NPCs with broken necks who just twirled their heads around like an unraveling ball of yarn. The multiplayer definitely struggled at launch though. It was really hard to connect with friends sometimes, but once you did, it was a super fun game, and playing solo was just as engaging. Launching the same month as Horizon Forbidden West and Elden Ring probably didn't do it many favors, especially being the first one to come out so it could get overshadowed twice in a row. But if you enter a lull period in your game catalog and you want to either go back and finish Dying Light 2 or check it out for the first time, you might have a great experience. Notable exception 3, Salt and Sacrifice. In 2016, I named Salt and Sanctuary my game of the year. The 2D Metroidvania Souls-like paved the way for the acceptance of similar titles in the genre, predating games like Hollow Knight, Death's Gambit, Blasphemous, and Ender Lilies. It was a terrific game. Salt and Sacrifice, the follow-up, isn't. It introduces an intrusive, maze-like, and pointless hub world that completely neuters the level design. What was once a series of interconnected environments that weaved into each other inspiringly, that could still be fast-traveled to and from with ease, is now just a broken series of locales that feel detached from any sort of grand design. The new bounty system for hunting down bosses isn't a terrible idea conceptually, but the execution is horrendous when bosses can show up in any part of any location, including 2 bosses at once, and usually next to a high ledge where they can knock you back with screen-wide attacks and kill you instantly. Running up against challenges only feels good when they're fair, and getting a boss almost killed before you inevitably get hit with 2 overlapping attacks that create an inescapable dodge window that knock you off a cliff to your immediate demise does not create the sensation I would call fun. It's just a worse game overall, and it's a damn shame. Top 20 games of 2022, number 10, Vampire Survivors. Maybe minimalist games do have more fun. Vampire Survivors is about as low-tech as it gets, but the auto-firing, weapon upgrading, monster annihilating game is still as addictive as anything over 16 bits, and you can play it with one hand. There's nothing to do with that information, but it's still information. I've gotten 44 hours of one-handed action out of Vampire Survivors, and I've never felt more satisfied. Number 9, Pokemon Legends Arceus. It's so weird to go back and play Pokemon Legends Arceus now and think, wow, this game runs well. It had its own technical issues, but you compare this to Scarlet and Violet and Legends Arceus, looks like it should have won Best Performance. This was a fun, different type of Pokemon game. Filling out portions of the decks individually by completing different objectives really made it feel like you were completing the world's first Pokedex, instead of just catching one and the decks automatically knowing everything about it like the other games. Throwing balls at them without having to battle them was also super convenient, and it was just a good world to get lost in and explore at your own pace, with hardly any trainer battles, and just focusing on good old-fashioned completionism. Number 8, Nobody Saves the World. One of the more slept-on indie games in my estimation, Nobody Saves the World gives you a super unique and varied RPG experience where you level up different forms and unlock new abilities to mix and match. It feels so good to take a shot in the dark on a new indie game you know nothing about and be rewarded immediately. After 2 minutes of playing, I was like, oh, this is good. Those $20 won't be missed. The grind of completing challenges to earn form XP is so addicting. Some challenges are a pain to attempt, but it feels super satisfying to get things done and unlock a powerful new form. Number 7, Rogue Legacy 2. Where was this game at the Game Awards? The fact that it got 0 nominations is criminal. Rogue Legacy wrote the damn book on roguelikes, and Rogue Legacy 2, now that it's out of early access, is better in every way. So many classes, so many stats, and more permanent progression than I've seen in any other game. You're always working towards something, and even when you fail, you're unlocking valuable stuff for the next run. If there's a roguelike in the world you should play, it's this one. Number 6, Grounded. Lots of games came out of early access this year and crushed it, although this one still kind of feels like it's in early access, not because it's not good, but because they're still making large, sweeping changes to the game every few weeks. Grounded is a banger survival game. Fighting bugs as a miniature human shrunk down in a backyard is such a simple but effective concept. Kill bugs, research their parts and pieces of the environment to discover recipes for new armor, weapons, tools, base building parts, you name it. It really shines in multiplayer, when you can have a bunch of people work on different things or team up to take down a tough bug, but single player is good too. The only thing I wish it had is fast travel, and I do think it suffers without it, but Grounded is still a great game to get into, with people or otherwise. Notable exception number 4, Stray. I liked Stray. Ever since its original announcement, I was all aboard the Stray train, a game where you play as a cat. Sign me up. I'm a cat lover. This game is for me. In the opening minutes, I was excited to live among my kitty brethren, and when we got separated, I felt really bad because I watched a cat fall into a damn sewer while his compatriots looked down and meowed at him sadly. It strengthened my resolve to see the game through so that I would finally be reunited with my cat family so we could all live cattily ever after. This game is almost 6 months old, so if you haven't played it yet, your spoiler grace period is over, but I'm not even going to spoil the ending, because all I'm going to talk about is how the game doesn't end. But skip to where you see number 5 on the top 20 list if you don't want to hear it. The game doesn't end with you reuniting with the other cats. Not because the circumstances make it impossible, but because they just don't fucking bother. They aren't even alluded to. The entire reason you'd want to escape the robot city you fall into, and they said, nah, nobody cares about that anymore. You only care about your little robo-friend now, right? No, I want to see my cat, who I had to watch get electrocuted and covered in cat-eating parasites whenever I failed to protect him. I want to see him saunter around with his fellow species again. Despite what you think you know about cats, they are very social creatures. When I had 2 cats who were best friends and one of them died, the other one was never the same until he went a couple years later. Stray is a decent game to play through, especially for how different it is, but if I knew they weren't going to give a shit about the cat's initial motivation, which if he didn't have, there would be no reason for him not to just settle down in the city somewhere without even trying to get out, if I knew they were going to hand deliver me this straight garbage ending, I wouldn't have played it to begin with. And now for the top 5 games of 2022. Number 5, Horizon Forbidden West. My 5th ranked game of 2022 and winner of Worst Launch Date in Recent Memory award goes to Horizon Forbidden West for releasing a week before Elden Ring despite also being an amazing game. It seems like it's become very difficult for people to praise one without shitting on the other, and it's dumb that Elden Ring has somehow made everybody reevaluate their opinion on what makes open world games good when the original Horizon was received almost unanimously well, and this sequel is much better than Zero Dawn. It's absolutely gorgeous, potentially the most beautiful high-end fantasy graphics ever made, and all the other systems have been tweaked and improved and make for an undeniably solid game to play, unless you all of a sudden hate compasses and quest markers now because Elden Ring didn't have them, and anything Elden Ring doesn't have is something no game should ever have, ever again, I guess. Elden Ring also doesn't have a pause button, but I think other games could probably still get away with it, for at least a little bit longer. I like Horizon's systems because I like being told where I could go, while still having the freedom to decide where I should go. Fighting robo-dinos is still a blast. Scavenging them for parts just satiates my hunger for some reason. Like, I'll loot a big monster and get that sound effect of all the stuff going in my bag and my mouth starts watering like I want more. Screw the haters, Horizon is great. Number 4, Elden Ring. I mean, I still ranked Elden Ring better, I'm just saying Horizon is also great. I'll be straight with you, the only reason Elden Ring wins here is because of the replayability. This game has so many weapons of all different types. Past Souls games, you'd have like 5 or 6 really good weapons to pick from if you wanted to do real damage. Elden Ring gives you dozens. The variety is insane. Even the weapons that aren't that good can still get it done. And content-wise, it truly is like 2 Souls games in one package. However, this game caters less to my particular breed of Souls fan than the previous games because there's a lot more aimless wandering, and I'm not much of an aimless wanderer. I don't want to flounder around trying to figure out where to go. I want to know where to go so I can go somewhere else. I would rather this game not be open world because there's about 1,000,000 miles of dead space that doesn't look like dead space because they put some enemies there that don't give you anything, or some scenery that doesn't hide anything of value unless you find one of the scattered dungeons and cave openings where they house the actual Souls game content. I remember riding around on my horse for minutes at a time just doing perimeter checks and looking for anything that looked remotely like a place of interest. And you know what would have really helped with that? To be specific, I would have really appreciated if they just lifted Skyrim's compass wholesale, so you could ride around and black outlines of places of interest would show up on there and you could home in on them if you choose to. But the other reason this game is super replayable is because once you do learn where everything is, good weapons for your build, boss locations, sites of grace, etc., everything gets super streamlined and fun. No more dead air, no more oops, it's been 6 hours and I still haven't found a decent dex weapon. You can just go to the places you've deemed important and get it done. The game absolutely shines on the second playthrough, like most Souls games I'd say, but to an even higher degree because you had to work through so much more inherent frustration to get there because you had to learn a lot more stuff. Getting boss patterns down is enough of a struggle when you've got like 30 of them in a game, but try 80 some odd unique ones. Elden Ring is the Mount Everest of games, a long, grueling climb to reach the top, but when you get there, all you can think about is how much easier and fun it'll be to do it again. Number 3, Marvel's Midnight Suns. Well, hey, I didn't expect this either. I guess I forgot how much I liked XCOM because this game got announced from the people who did that as almost the same kind of game, and I was just like, But I tried it on a whim, and it sucked me right back into that XCOM zone. I was feeling it in the tutorial. I played my first card, I was like, oh, yep, this is what I like. It differs from XCOM in some ways, because you use cards to activate abilities, and you can generally play 3 total per turn, regardless of which hero they're coming from. Do one from each unit, or have Spider-Man wipe the whole field by himself. He's definitely capable. Knockback effects, environmental attacks, buffs, debuffs, AoE, piercing, it's all here and it's all great. The combat just feels incredible, and the missions can be taken at your own pace, doing as many extra ones as you want if you want the game to take 20 years to finish. My only gripe with combat is that you can knock enemies into pits or off ledges to insta-kill them, but there's only a % chance for them to fall based on their HP, so you could waste a card play trying to go for a 40% chance for some enemy to land in a hole, only for him to regain his balance, and the odds feel a little too understacked. Especially because many knockback cards don't do actual damage, so if they don't get knocked off, you quite literally did nothing. For me, it just incentivizes knocking enemies into each other instead for guaranteed damage, and makes certain characters like Ghost Rider feel obsolete when half their gimmick is trying to make people fall into shit. Outside of the combat, you've got a free-roaming hub world where you can talk to heroes and build relationships with them, give them gifts, listen to their problems, and conferring neat bonuses as a reward for upping their friendship level. The dialogue is incredibly marvelly, in which even the characters who don't do jokes, and the characters who do jokes do non-stop jokes. But underneath that is a good, interesting story with more character building than you could believe possible in a Marvel property. I just wish your created character's name wasn't Hunter, because that is the lamest hero name ever. Like, I had a neighbor named Hunter, and he didn't get resurrected after 300 years to battle his evil demon mother. At least not yet, anyway. If you like tactics games, you cannot miss this one, even if you're not a Marvel fan, because I wouldn't call myself one, but DC has been shitting the game industry bed lately, so I have no choice. Number 2, Neon White. It's the most fun game of 2022. We're talking pure, unadulterated fun. Doesn't have to be dressed up in a big fancy narrative with big extended cutscenes or wrapped in mind-boggling graphics. It just has to do what it does and do it better than anyone else. And this game does. Neon White is an anime speedrunning platform FPS that uses cards to dictate actions. You pick up a pistol card, you can shoot demons with it, or discard it while in midair to perform a double jump. You pick up a sniper card, you can do heavy sniper damage to bulkier demons, or discard it for a long speed dash forward. Kill all the demons in a level as fast as possible and get to the end. That's it. There's a story behind it too, and it's not bad or anything, but this game is full-on action and full-on leaderboard grinding. Every level a speed-run puzzle for you to figure out, with even a couple speed-run boss fights thrown in for good measure. It's glorious. This game suffers from doesn't present well in a trailer to people who don't understand what's happening syndrome, but as soon as you're the one doing the action, it clicks immediately. I was 10 seconds into the first level and I said out loud, oh shit, like it was an above-average orgasm. Neon White is a banger and a half. Number 1. God of War Ragnarok. Neon White might be the most fun game in a vacuum, but God of War delivered a non-stop great time as well over a longer period with more factors at play in a more impressive way overall. This game bangs start to finish, and the pure stamina is ridiculous. I was binging the hell out of this game at launch so YouTube could age restrict one of my boss rankings for no reason, and even though that kind of binge for content puts me in more of a work mode than a let's have fun playing games mode, I was still having a blast the whole time. It's just stellar across the board, and better than the 2018 God of War in every way. Much more enemy variety, much better bosses, much less annoying and playable Atreus. What's not to like? The different realms are a series of small but densely packed open worlds with lots to do, always rewarding, even some Metroidvania elements to keep you coming back to old locales for more. God of War Ragnarok is just the game, and in my case, it's the game of the year for 2022. Because I know you'll have questions about particular games you didn't see here, I will now read off my list of games I was interested in, but either didn't have time to play or didn't have time to play the previous games in the franchise. AI Somnium Files, Nirvana Initiative, Evil West, and Bayonetta 3. I'm guessing all three of those could have landed somewhere in the top 20 or honorable mentions, but I played like 50 games this year and ain't nobody got time to play them all. For the rest of the games you might be wondering about, you can assume I wasn't interested in them, either because they didn't look good or because of the genre. But that's gonna do it for my biggest top 20 game list yet. Like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at Sunburned Albino. Check out my streams when I stream. Watch all my videos that came out this year and rank your top 20, and I'll see you guys next time.